On a single morning in 1929, the richest nation on Earth suddenly went broke. Not by war, famine, or invasion, but because numbers stopped making sense. What unfolded wasn't just a market crash, it was the beginning of a silent global financial war. A conflict over gold, debt, and who would control the future of money itself. This war wasn't fought with guns or armies, but with interest rates, currencies, and printing presses. It had clear winners and losers, shaped not by chance but by deliberate design. Yet the story you probably never learned in school is how these hidden battles during the Great Depression reshaped the global order. Quietly, profoundly, and permanently. By late 1929, cracks were appearing beneath the surface, industrial production slowed, farm prices tumbled, Europe showed signs of stress, yet amid it all, optimism blinded many. The market had to rise, it always did. Then came Black Thursday, October 24, 1929. The first sell orders were quiet, but chaos quickly followed. Within hours, Wall Street was engulfed in panic. 5 days later, on Black Tuesday, October the 29th, billions vanished from the markets. Men stood in silence outside the New York Stock Exchange, stunned, unable to comprehend the scale of the collapse. But that crash was only the spark. The real fire was stoked by policy choices, decisions made in the name of stability that would soon destroy trust worldwide. Before the collapse, the 1920s had dazzled many with a mirage of endless prosperity. Jazz, skyscrapers, automobiles, symbols of unstoppable optimism. America emerged from the Great War confident and strong. It was the world's banker, its factory, its hope. Wall Street had become the planet's new financial capital. But beneath the surface, cheap credit and rampant speculation were building a dangerous illusion. The Federal Reserve, then barely a decade old, was fueling this momentum. Banks encouraged people to buy stocks on margin, borrowing $9 for everyone they owned. Ordinary Americans dreamed of instant wealth. The Dow soared and headlines hailed progress. But prosperity built on debt is fragile. Leverage bends until it inevitably breaks. After the crash, the Federal Reserve faced a brutal choice: flood the system with money or tighten credit to defend the dollar's value. The decision shaped the coming chaos. Tied to the gold standard, every dollar printed had to be backed by gold reserves. The Fed feared losing gold to foreign nations if trust faltered. Rather than easing credit, the Fed raised interest rates, liquidity dried up. Banks began to fail by the thousands, shuttering their doors and freezing out savers. Between 1930 and 1933, nearly 10,000 banks failed in the U.S. alone. Lines of desperate people stretched outside, seeking to withdraw savings that were forever lost. This wasn't a market crash anymore. It was a monetary collapse felt across the world, a financial contagion with no easy cure. At the center was the gold standard, once a symbol of stability. Now it became a noose, forcing nations to keep currencies fixed and react painfully when gold reserves fled. When gold left a country, governments had to raise interest rates, cut wages, and slash spending to lure it back, a process called deflation that meant economic pain and suffering. In Britain, unemployment soared beyond 20%. In Germany, despair fueled extremist politics. In America, factories shuttered while gold sat locked away in vaults, useless against the crisis. The first to break free from this gold trap was Britain. By 1931, the Bank of England was losing gold reserves fast. The pound faced a rapid collapse despite harsh austerity measures. In September 1931, Britain shocked the world by abandoning the gold standard. Overnight, the pound plunged 30%. A century of trust in sterling was suddenly broken. Remarkably, Britain began to recover quickly. Exports rose, credit loosened, and industries started ticking upward. The harsh lesson: freedom from gold could bring relief. Across the Atlantic, the United States held fast to gold as if it were a sacred duty. President Hoover insisted on sound money, even as the country suffered catastrophic deflation. Prices fell by a third. Farmers poured milk into ditches rather than sell at a loss. Millions were unemployed, bread lines stretched for blocks. The dollar remained strong while people starved. But what followed would change the course of America and the world. Franklin Roosevelt's arrival marked a revolution, not of jobs, but of money itself. In 1933, Roosevelt declared a nationwide bank holiday, freezing the failing system. Then, by executive order, he confiscated private gold coins from citizens paying a fixed price, an act unseen before in U.S. history. The government then revalued gold from $20.67 to $35 per ounce, devaluing the dollar by nearly 40%. This transfer of wealth from citizens to state was hidden yet vast. Once America devalued, other nations joined the race to cheapen their own currencies. The 1930s unfolded as a fierce global currency war, each nation trying to export its economic pain. Dollar fell, franc fell, lira fell, yen followed. Tariffs rose, trade collapsed, globalization reversed, the fractured world split into rival currency zones defending their own interests. But the damage went far beyond finance. Economic despair fueled political extremism and unrest across continents, reshaping nations in volatile ways. In Germany, 6 million were unemployed, the middle class devastated by both inflation and deflation. Many turned to a man promising revival, Adolf Hitler. In Japan, militarists surged, claiming conquest was the only path to survival. Italy's Mussolini glorified state control, while Roosevelt vastly expanded federal power in the U.S. In the Soviet Union, Stalin tightened his iron grip, all from the same root cause, monetary failure that shattered trust and reordered global power. The Great Depression wasn't just economic collapse. It was a global reshuffling of power, laying new foundations that dictated the world to come. By the late 1930s, recovery appeared, but it wasn't natural. Governments, especially in the U.S., had taken command, orchestrating economies at an unprecedented scale. Roosevelt's New Deal built infrastructure and jobs, but also institutionalized state control. Eventually, rearmament replaced recovery as World War II loomed on the horizon. When the war ended, the monetary map was unrecognizable. Gold was hoarded in Fort Knox, and the U.S. dollar emerged as the world's dominant currency, setting the stage for a new economic order. In 1944, nations met at Bretton Woods to devise a new financial framework. Currencies were pegged to the dollar, and the dollar remained tied to gold, crowning America as the new global banker. But what most people miss is that the gold standard didn't fail because it was ineffective economically. It died because it limited political power, a conflict that changed everything. Defending gold meant austerity, riots, and economic pain. Abandoning it meant inflation and tighter government control. Either way, the citizen paid the price. Every rescue, bailout, or stability measure pushed power upward, away from savers and markets toward states and bureaucracies. The Great Depression was a takeover, not just a collapse. It marked the shift from gold-backed freedom to paper-backed management, a fundamental change in how economies operate and who holds the reins. If this history feels distant, the echoes are clear today. The 2008 financial crisis mirrored similar patterns, banks failing, credit freezing, and central banks aggressively printing money. Unlike the 1930s, this time inflation was chosen over deflation, and system failure was avoided by unprecedented intervention, printing trillions to prop up the financial system. In 2020, as the world faced yet another crisis, money printing reached new heights. Governments acted as both arsonists and firefighters, igniting new risks even as they fought collapse. Both eras ended similarly. Power concentrated, trust eroded, and ordinary people bore the greatest costs as money became more than currency. It became a weapon of control. The true lesson of the Great Depression isn't about markets, it's about illusion. The belief that money and systems are unbreakable, only to face startling truths again and again. Money is a weapon. Under gold, it enforced discipline. Under fiat currency, it enforces control. Either way, it serves power, turning inward when trust collapses. Next time you hear terms like interest rates, quantitative easing, or currency defense, remember these are battles, not just technical policies, strategies with human costs. In the 1930s, defending currency meant starvation through deflation. Today, it means gradual erosion through inflation. Different tactics, same ultimate impact for ordinary people. Governments survive these crises. Banks adapt, elites adjust. But ordinary people invariably pay the heaviest price, a silent toll often overlooked in economic narratives. The Great Depression wasn't the end of capitalism. It was its transformation, a move from a world anchored by gold to one backed only by promises and trust. History doesn't repeat, it echoes. The patterns are clear when debt piles up, speculation runs rampant, and central banks play both arsonist and firefighter in the global economy. From the 1970s to 2008 to 2020, different decades share the same rhythm: weaponized money, broken trust, and crises that upend lives worldwide. Every crisis is a new campaign in an ongoing global financial war, a struggle over trust, control, and the true value of what you own.